Welcome to Insight Plug, the podcast where independent creators and entrepreneurs connect and inspire. I'm your host, Devon Jones. Today on our show, we have actor and entrepreneur Ryan Keith. Ryan, welcome to the show.
All right, thank you, and I appreciate you for having me. This is huge. You know, when you asked me to be on, I was honored because I saw some of the guests that you've had on here, and I was just like, I'm not on these guys level like me, but no, I appreciate it so much, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I love having you on. And just like some of the other fellow filmmakers, I'm glad to listen to everyone's story and hear how they started and what's next for them. So before we jump into the projects and your business ventures that you've started, let's talk about Ryan Keith as an actor. When did you know that acting wanted to be is a career that you wanted to pursue?
Um, you know what? Late, very, very late in the game. I had no idea, to be honest with you. Growing up in the Midwest, I would see actors on TV, and if you're not surrounded by it, you don't feel it's attainable. And so I never thought it was attainable. You know, you see these people on TV, you're like, oh, they're famous. It wasn't even a thought of my mind. But I was fortunate enough to be sent to California for my previous job in finance. And from then, unfortunately, the job ended up shutting down, which is fine. I'm in California. So what do? Why not? You're right. You're in the land of milk and honey and actors and movie stars. So I kind of just threw my hat in the ring. I was fortunate enough to get a few background roles, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But even more so, this is attainable. I found that you don't necessarily have to be, an A-list actor to be considered an actor, to be an actor. There are so many levels in between, right? Not everyone is, going to be like a Denzel Washington or a Michael B. Jordan, right? There's so many paths and so many actors in between that I loved it. I was just like, this is great because I had no dreams of being an actor. I didn't. And even now, you know, I don't necessarily I don't necessarily fit into like the film, TV show type acting realm. I'm more so like commercial acting. I'm more so like that and industrial videos. But again, that's still a working actor. And I think one of the hardest parts about that is if somebody does ask, well, what do you do? And you tell them you're an actor. And they say, well, I've never seen you on TV. You're not an actor. They doubt if they're not in that world, right? And they doubt you. And they're like, you're not an actor because I don't see you in Hollywood or, you're not on TV. And you're like, those are just a small, small subset of actors, right? Such a small, especially when you come back to Chicago and you see the community that we have out here. And there's always something going on. There's always movies being filmed, commercials being filmed. We're still actors. So, to answer your question, honestly, just very late did I realize it. But I realized that I think the biggest thing I found was that it was attainable. And so like I said, just kind of late in the game, man. Just real late in the game. I want to say probably around 30-ish, give or take. That was it. Yeah.
But that's awesome, though. You say you threw your hat in the ring and you took a chance, and
No, why not?
you're still going. So just to touch base a little bit, you say you started with the background acting. Now, I'm curious, how did that happen for you? Did you go to an audition, or did someone come to you and present, "This is my project. I'm looking for
Sure.
background actors"?
Sure. So, I was in, so I was in California, and I remember I was at one of the LA fitnesses, and so a gentleman approached me and he asked if I, done acting or if I was interested in acting, and of course I looked at him like, I'm a Midwest kid. No, like, acting. I can't be like one of these people on TV. And he said, no, no, you should try it. And then so he ended up giving me his contact information. And I thought it was weird because I'm like, oh, it's California. Some dude gave me his contact information, but um he ended up casting me for a background role in a famous YouTuber's like their skit, right? Little influencer skit. And after I was the background on that, I realized I was like, oh, this is cool. And even more so, I realized that these were my people, like the actors and all that stuff. I was like, these are people that kind of understand me. Because as a creative, and as a creative, there are some things that you can't talk about with people that aren't creatives because they're not going to understand, right? They're not going to understand how your mind works, right? Because we think outside of the box, right? We're not normal, right? We have thoughts that are kind of like, oh, different, right, than the average person. And that's what makes us creative. And I'm sure you've had the same thing where you try to say things to people and they just don't understand quite, like you want them to understand because, you're just in a different world. And so that's kind of how it happened. And then from then on, it just spiraled, and you start learning more things. You start talking to more people. You start gaining little nuggets of information, from everyone you talk to, and then you put it all together, and you just keep moving forward and moving forward.
Nice, nice. I love that. I love that. Yes, that is definitely so true. So I'm curious, with the background acting, how did you transition into commercial acting? How did you find that to be like your niche and your thing to do?
So I think it was through Backstage, as crazy as it was through Backstage and like casting networks and talking to different people and meeting different people. Networking was still, and is still huge, right? Because a lot of people aren't going to look at your resume necessarily. They're going to look to see how you look. Of course, that's a big thing, right? Especially if you're going to be on TV. But they're not necessarily going to look at your resume because more, you can be somebody's going to look at you and say, okay, I can mold that person. Or if they can follow directions, I can put them anywhere. And I think that was the thing. So from there, I just talked to people, applied as much as I could for every single role that I could via Backstage, via, just different platforms. And I would just get picked for things. And I was fortunate enough to get picked for things. And you can imagine, again, Midwest kid in California getting picked for roles, getting picked for commercials. My mind was blown. My mind was like, what, this can't be real. This I can't believe it. And even now, when I get cast for like roles out here in Chicago, I'm still in shock and awe because I know how many people I'm sure apply for these certain roles. And I'm like, you guys pick me, out of everybody out here. So, um, I don't know. Like I said, it's still just mind boggling and mind blowing to me, just the whole world. And of acting and commercial acting, but I just knew I like commercials just because I don't know. It just fit. I just felt like it fit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You got it. That's why they keep picking you. And so I have a question. You say you like commercials.
Right.
Is there a commercial that stands out to you that kind of inspired you to keep going with commercial acting rather than, okay, I've done commercial acting. Maybe I can try TV and film again, or even background acting.
Well, so with like the background acting, I think the background acting was a good starting point, right? And I think a lot of people start in background acting because it's it's easy. I mean, it's tedious, but it is easy, right? Because all you're doing is essentially just walking around, or you're just filling the space, the empty space on TV. So, you don't talk, you don't do anything. You just got to follow directions, which is stand here, walk here, whatever. Um, with the commercial aspect of it, I like it because it's short, right? Because it's short and it's quick. With film acting, it's great, and the commitment, I think for me personally, just the commitment of, okay, you have to be on set for like a week at a time, or you have to be on set for months at a time, and then you have to memorize all these lines, and you have to do, and I don't, just I don't think I have the attention span for that. I just don't. But for commercials, I love them because they're quick, they're easy. You memorize some lines, you might have 1, 2 days on set, give or take, and then that's it. And then you're done. So, but the commercial I think that made me realize that I this is what I love is my first commercial was with my cat, Diva. It was for Blue Buffalo. And I just saw how quick, how easy, how simple it was, how chill everybody was because that was my first, quote unquote main role. And I was just like, wow, this is it, huh? And they were like, oh yeah, you're just here for like 4 hours. You get, pampered up and all that kind of stuff. You get unlimited food and you're there for like 4 hours and then you're done. And I was like, wait, that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's it. I was like, oh, wait, is this all commercials? And they're like, yeah, for the most part, you're on a set a day, maybe some lines here and there, but that's it. And I was like, oh, this I can legit, this I can legit do. This
Nice,
this I can do.
nice, nice. And will you be willing to share some of the other brands of the commercials that you've done? I mean, you mentioned
Yeah.
Blue Buffalo.
Yeah, absolutely. So Blue Buffalo, just recently back here in Chicago, I did a commercial with Wind Creek, which is a casino out here in Homewood. Um, let's see, Potawatomi Casino in Milwaukee and Wisconsin. Let's see, Crimesley. That is an up and coming kind of a crime deterrent type device. So that was a commercial that I did just recently. And then I've also transitioned into user generated content as well, which is like, the commercials that you see on TikTok or on Facebook or on Instagram where you have the person that's holding up the camera and they're like, oh, yeah, I tried such and such and blah, 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 blah. Um, so I do things like that for Freebird is one. So it's like the Head Shaver, Cook Unity. So and then a few other brands that I've done too, in the commercial aspect in the UGC world, because I think that's where a lot of the content is going commercials wise, especially for these big companies.
Nice, nice. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So you mentioned that the person in California gave you their contact and you were at LA Fitness. Now,
Right.
also I have that you are a fitness model as well. How did you find yourself navigating towards that?
So I've always been into working out. Like that was always I grew up as an overweight kid. So once I hit college, my first year of college, uh, one of my friends introduced me actually to the gym and I started working out and working out. And, once you start working out, it's hard to stop, especially once you start to see like results, right? And you're like, okay. And then mentally, you're like, okay, I don't want to go back to how I was. And then so like it kind of sticks with you, sticks with you, sticks with you. And then so, um, again, it just kept working out, kept working out. And I would meet people at the gym and at these gyms, they would, ask me questions like, do you do, same thing. Do you do fitness modeling? Do you do this? Do you do that? And you don't want to give away an opportunity, right? So if somebody asks you, and especially if it sounds like they have an opportunity for you, you said, yeah, absolutely. Even though if you haven't before, you're like, yeah, yeah, sure, why not? How hard could it be? You stand there. And then so I took a chance and I was like, yeah, why not? I'm not getting any younger and I've been working out for X amount of years, might as well do something, might as well earn some money with it. And then I mean, then just spiraled from there. So just trying the idea was trying to be as diverse in the creative space as possible.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so we touched on fitness model, we touched on your commercial acting. So now you're an entrepreneur and you have the company Keystone Ventures.
Correct.
How did you start that business and where did that idea come from?
So Keystone Ventures, I decided that once I was going to go full throttle with acting and with everything that I wanted to do, being kind of self-employed, right? From acting aspect, from an investing standpoint, also from a like stock standpoint, because I also day trade as well. I was like, you know what? I need to make this legit. And if I'm going to make this legit, I'm going to go all in and make it legit. And then so I said, well, you know what? I might as well start this company. And so, my last name is Keith and I wanted it to be vague, right? So I wanted it to not just be like Keystone Media because I wanted to encompass different aspects of everything. So whether it be like a transportation company, which I do plan on starting eventually, the media aspect of things like the commercials that we were just speaking about, or the modeling or the videography, because I also do videography as well, like the editing and things like that for different companies as well, or just different aspects. I didn't want it to be into one thing. So by putting it as Keystone Ventures, I'm able to do everything that I want and just kind of tie it all into there. So I'm also studying to get my real estate license. So as many things as possible, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to throw it into this company and this is just going to be my baby and I'm just going to grow it. So, I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to learn how to do this. I'm going to learn how to do that. Just keep going and keep going until I can't anymore.
Awesome, awesome. And for everyone that's listening, could you share where can we find Keystone Ventures at? Like if someone wanted to get in contact with you to possibly, a commercial or, fitness or, even of your other services like, editing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, what you can do is either via Instagram or via Facebook, either one. You can find me at Ryan H. Keith, and that's going to be on Instagram, or just Ryan Keith, and that's going to be on Facebook, and that's going to go directly to me.
All right, and I have a few more questions. So as a commercial actor, 1 second.
No worries.
Do you have what actor inspires you? Like, what was one of the actors that you looked up to at an early age, even if it was a commercial actor or a non-commercial actor?
See, and that's such a hard question. That's such a hard question because, I say I never wanted to be one. I thought there were great actors, of course, right? I thought there were amazing actors, and you can tell the difference acting wise between like actors on Tubi and actors on like Netflix, right? So, but you know, when I think about who I look up to as far as acting is concerned, I look up to a lot of actors that are on Tubi, like a lot of the B movie actors. So maybe not anyone in particular, but I have such a great respect for B movie actors and actresses. Reason being is because I tend to like those movies a little bit better than movies that are like on Netflix or that are, at the movie theater because I know how vulnerable you have to be on screen like that, right? To put yourself out there when you're not like an A-list actor, you're not the best actor in the world. You know that people are going to judge you, and then, but at the same time, you put so much time, effort, and love into this project, and it's never going to go to Hollywood or it's never going to be on Netflix, but they have this passion, and the love for the art. So honestly, as far as looking up to people, anybody I see on Tubi, with a movie, something, even a stupid movie. Like I just saw the other day a movie called Meth Gator. Like it's dumb, right? Or like Sharknado or something. Like it's dumb, but just because they were able to put themselves out there and be vulnerable like that, those are the actors and actresses that I look up to because those are the ones that aren't doing it for, $1 million. Those are the ones that aren't doing it for the fame. They're doing it for the love of the art, and for the practice. And so those are the ones that I look up to.
All right, all right. Thanks for sharing that. All right, so we're at that point of the episode where I ask all the guests, what is a book, a TV show, or a film that you recommend to an aspiring actor or entrepreneur? But in your case, being that you're entrepreneur, you can include like investment, tips or even an investment book or a
Sure.
mogul.
Mm, so what I would suggest, so there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy and Blue Ocean Shift. And the gist of that book is that you have a red ocean and a blue ocean. The red ocean is somebody like Pepsi, like these big companies that are going after a select, few clientele, right? And then you have the blue ocean where you go after the clientele that these big companies might not be going after, but you're creating your business in a way of empowering your employees and empowering the people around you to be a part of that business, right? One analogy that I was given by a gentleman who introduced me to this book was that you have, say, somebody with a knife and somebody with fish, right? Now, that person with a knife, he can go and he can, take with force that fish, right, from the person that has the fish. But that person with the knife will have to sleep with one eye open, right? Because that person with the fish is going to come back for him. Or what that person with the knife can do is they can work together. So now that person with the fish can use that person's knife and vice versa, right? Because they have something, they have assets, they have strengths that they can combine and work together to flourish. And then they don't have to sleep with their one eye open because now they don't have enemies, right? Now they're working together. And when I read this book, I was like, this makes so much sense, right? When you try to get a community together to work to one goal and for one project together, it it flows so much better versus, okay, now I have to take yours, I have to take yours, I have to take yours. And then you have enemies, you create enemies. But why create enemies when you can create allies? And then so that's one thing that I've learned, even in this industry, it it wasn't necessarily from a business standpoint, but it was from a, okay, well, if I know how to edit videos and I know this person is an amazing actor or actress, why not help her out? Why not help him out, by editing his videos? And then turn, if he has maybe a plug to, a casting director, right, that they feel that I might be good for on the commercial aspect, because I know a lot more people like films and TV, and a lot of people tend to look down on commercials. I'm like, they might, plug me with that. And even if they don't, not a big deal, but at least you made friends as opposed to making enemies. So the Blue Ocean Strategy, Blue Ocean Shift is one book that I would suggest that everybody looks into, just because I mean, it makes so much sense, and it'll kind of keep you thinking outside of the norm of I have to take, but instead of it's I have to gather, with everyone else and grow with everyone else.
I love that. I love that. Everyone, go check that book out. All right. This has been today's episode of Inside Plug. We had actor and entrepreneur Ryan Keith. Ryan, thank you again for sharing your journey and look forward to seeing your commercials and hearing more about Keystone Adventures.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And hey, by the way, I love your podcast, man. Like you're man, and then just from how you've come up and how you've grown as well. Again, I applaud that. I applaud that, and I applaud you not losing your creativity, because I know how hard it is to keep it when you're not around, a bunch of creatives. You have to try to stay in your box and try to be your own creative. So I applaud you. I applaud you, man. And this podcast is awesome, and it's gonna grow. And I look forward to continuing to watch your podcast and continuing to see how it flourishes.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Hey, remember, everyone inspires me as well. And I really appreciate that. All right, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for tuning into Inside Plug. If you love today's episode, don't forget to check out some of our previous episodes. And remember, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, Inside Plug with 2 Gs. We're here every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And remember, stay inspired and keep creating. Inside Plug, signing out.